name is Elizabeth Katie Stanton, and my husband and I are the main organizers for the Seneca Falls Convention. It was the first women's rights convention in the United States. It took place in Seneca Falls, New York, in July of 1848. Although my dear friend Susan B. Anthony did not attend, it was a successful event that incited the suffragist movement.
That's right. My mother and sister attended the convention, but I couldn't. Elizabeth and I worked together for 50 years to gain equal rights for women. From a young age, I was inspired by the Quaker belief of equal rights, hence why I fought alongside Elizabeth for years. We would travel around the country to deliver speeches, sometimes risking getting arrested just to speak out about our beliefs. In fact, I got arrested for voting in 1872.
Where do you think you're going?
Anyways, I was born in 1820 in Massachusetts, and like me, my 6 siblings also grew up to become activists. Later on, my family moved to New York, and I met Elizabeth in 1851. Much of my activism consisted of circulating petitions for abolition and women's rights. I began my reform by fighting against slavery and later went on to join the temperance movement before joining the fight for women's rights. I first joined this after meeting Elizabeth Cady Stanton during one of her anti-slavery conferences. I especially focused on dress reform, and I did not adhere to the fashions of that time. I also later went to convince a college to accept women.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Cady Stanton. I was educated through my father, who was a lawyer and who I would often listen to speak. In 1840, I married Henry Stanton, and I quickly joined the abolitionist movement with him. Later, I met Lucretia Mons, and we worked together to stop the exclusion of women. In 1851, I met Susan B. Anthony, and together we wrote speeches and petitions for the suffragette movement. Although Susan and I were influential pioneers for women's rights, there were other activists such as Sarah and Angelina Grimke who made a great impact through their efforts in the movement.
Hi, my name is Sarah Grimke.
And I'm Angelina Grimke.
And we're the Grimke sisters.
We came from a rich family in South Carolina. My father, John Grimke, was an educated judge and the Chief Justice of the state. As much as I loved my parents, they were slave owners and restricted our education. When I was 5, I witnessed the cruel things my parents would do to such innocent people. I despised slavery ever since.
Our father believed that women were inferior to men, so he limited us to learning how to sew, clean, and become a good housewife. Luckily, our brothers taught us how to read and write in secret.
One time I was teaching Bible lessons and got caught teaching a maid how to read and got punished. Even through all those troubles, me and Angelina grew very close to each other. Sadly, when I turned 26, I had to leave her, but went to Philadelphia with our father. There, I had grew interest with the Quakers as they also disapproved of gender inequality and slavery. In 1818, I left Philadelphia back to home.
Sarah inspired me with her views on women's rights and abolition when she came back. In 1835, I wrote a letter to the Liberator based on my views of abolition. Soon after, I became the first woman to address the Massachusetts state legislature about women's rights and abolition. After all those years, Sarah, my husband, and I opened a boarding school in Belleville and Perth Amboy, New Jersey. Activists such as Elizabeth Cady Stanton sent their children to our boarding school.
Throughout our lives, we have tried to advocate women's rights and abolition and set the paved way for the women's rights movement.
Although there are many movements trying to reform society, there are also aspects such as the cult of domesticity, which slowed the furthering of society. The cult of domesticity was a period of time between 1820 and 1860 that revolved around the ideas of feminine behavior and womanliness. True womanhood was defined under the concepts of piety, purity, submissiveness, and domesticity. Women were held exclusively to the role of wife and mother and were exclusive to their homes as their domain of influence. The cult of domesticity even limited women's career options, educational opportunities, and desires for reform. Under the cult of domesticity, it was believed that in return for security and protection from the husband, it was the wife and the woman's duty to take care of the family, raise good children, and do household chores like cooking and cleaning. The cult of domesticity was meant for the wives and daughters of homes that followed the structure of American, white, upper, and middle-class homes. The ideas presented by the cult of domesticity led to many women rejecting the idea and later influenced feminism and the advocacy for women's rights.
To this day, the strive for equity, equality, and justice continues. Feminism still focuses on the change of societally expected gender norms and behaviors.
Although these pioneers for women's rights faced many struggles, the passion and determination for equity led to many rights and privileges we have today, such as education, the right to vote, right to own property, and many more.
Feminism has evolved significantly over time. In old feminism, the main focus was to overcome struggle and to fight for gender equality. As time passes, new issues would emerge, and the ideals in feminism would expand to a wider range, including reproductive rights, workplace, family, and more.
Today and forevermore, the fight for women's rights continues to ensure that no rights are violated based on uncontrollable factors such as race, gender, or wealth.
Stop right there!
Go for it.
What did we say?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the
Stop. Okay, Diddy, don't laugh at this. We're gonna tell you ahead.
She already started recording.
Once we get after and got punished,
You're not
I'm gonna wipe
recording
it and you're gonna be like, it's okay.
I'm passionate
Yeah,
about what we're saying.
Women's rights, you know. Why are you laughing? This is a serious topic.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Just this. It's just this, and this, and this. Okay, guys, start coughing, please.